The marketplace was loud and cruel. Voices shouted prices. Aliens bargained over lives like they were nothing. In the center stood a raised metal platform, rusted and wet from the morning mist. That's where they brought her. The girl in chains, wrapped in a dirty cloth, face hidden. Her steps were weak, her body thin, and her head hung low like she had forgotten how to stand tall. The auctioneer, a three-eyed beast with gold teeth, grabbed her arm roughly. "She's not worth much," he said, laughing. "But maybe someone wants a quiet one. This thing doesn't even talk." The crowd laughed with him. One alien threw a rock at her feet, and she didn't even flinch. Another shouted, "Take off the cloth. Let us see her shame." But the auctioneer shook his head. "No need. She's marked under the rags, scars all over. This one's broken." At the back of the crowd, a human stood quietly. His name was Draven, a trader, passing through the region to collect parts and fuel. He wasn't looking to buy anyone, not today. But something about the girl made him pause. She wasn't like the others. She wasn't crying, not begging, just standing there, empty, like a ghost. Then she whispered something, so soft that no one else heard it. "I'm not worthy." Draven felt something strange in his chest, like her words reached into him. He had seen pain before, but this was something deeper. "All right," the auctioneer shouted. "No bids? I'll throw her to the pits." Draven raised his hand. "I'll take her." The crowd turned, surprised. The auctioneer raised an eyebrow. "You? A human? You want this thing?" Draven nodded once, serious. "How much?" The alien laughed. "1 coin. Just get her off my stage." Draven tossed a small silver token, and the chains were released. The girl's legs gave out, and she fell to her knees. Draven stepped forward, gently placing his coat over her shoulders. She flinched, expecting pain, but his touch was warm. "It's all right," he said softly. "You're safe now." She looked up at him, just for a second. Behind the cloth, 2 glowing eyes met his, full of sorrow, fear, and something else. A spark. Then she collapsed into his arms, too weak to speak again. Draven carried her away through the cruel stares and laughter. He didn't care what she was, or what the others thought. In his mind, a question echoed. Why did she whisper those words, and why did it feel like she was more than what they said? As his ship lifted from the dusty ground, the girl lay wrapped in his coat, still and quiet. But Draven knew this was only the beginning. Something about her was hidden, something powerful, and even if she didn't believe in herself, he would believe for both of them, because no one deserved to be thrown away, not even a girl who whispered, "I'm not worthy."
The Emberwake moved quietly through the stars inside the ship. Soft lights glowed on the walls, and the hum of the engines was the only sound. Draven sat at the control panel, eyes watching the screen, but his mind kept drifting to the girl lying on the small bed behind him. She hadn't spoken since the auction, not even a single word. She stayed curled up in the corner of the ship's medical bay, wrapped in his coat, face still hidden beneath the cloth. Draven had offered her food, simple things, soft things, but she hadn't touched them. She only stared at the floor or at the metal wall, unmoving, like a statue made of silence and pain. He didn't know her name, didn't know what species she was. All he knew was her voice, that one soft whisper, "I'm not worthy." And now, she sat in his ship like a ghost, present but unreachable. Draven wasn't a rescuer, he was a traitor, a fighter when needed, and a man who usually avoided trouble. But this girl, she had changed something inside him. He walked slowly over to her, knelt down without touching her. "I won't hurt you," he said gently. "You don't need to fear me." She didn't move, didn't respond. Draven placed a warm blanket near her side and returned to his seat. Hours passed, stars drifting by the ship's window. The girl didn't sleep, she just sat, arms wrapped around her knees, breathing slow and shallow. Later that night, while checking the navigation logs, Draven heard something, a soft sound, broken and trembling. He turned his head. She was whispering again, but not to him. "No light, no name, no home," she repeated, like a prayer or a curse. Draven's chest tightened. She sounded so lost, so hollow. He stood again, walked to the back storage area, and returned with a soft container. Inside it was a small cube, an entertainment unit with old Earth music. He placed it near her and tapped it, a slow, quiet melody began to play, soft piano notes filling the room, not too loud, not too sad, just peaceful. The girl flinched at first, then slowly looked up, her glowing eyes peeked from behind the cloth, watching the lights dance on the ceiling. Draven said nothing. He didn't want to scare her again. He just sat nearby and let the music speak where words could not. She didn't run, she didn't cry, she just listened, and for the first time, she moved. Her hands slowly reached out, not to him, but to the cube. She touched the corner of it, eyes wide like she hadn't seen beauty in years. Then she whispered again, not fearfully, but softly, "Thank you." Draven turned, surprised. Her voice had changed, just a little, still broken, but no longer hollow. "You don't have to thank me," he said, "just rest." The girl nodded once, then leaned her head against the wall and closed her eyes, still wrapped in the cloth, still hiding, but now, finally, sleeping. Draven watched her for a while longer. There was more to this girl, he knew it. Now, not just scars, not just pain, there was something buried under that cloth, and he was going to find it, not because he had to, but because someone finally saw her and she had seen him too.
The Emberwake floated through deep space, quiet and safe, but inside the ship, something was slowly changing. The girl, once silent and still, had started moving a little. She now drank warm soup. Draven left near her, though she never touched it while he watched. She didn't speak again after that one soft "thank you," but she no longer hid her eyes from him. She watched him quietly from behind her cloth, always alert, always ready to run, but she stayed. Draven didn't ask questions. He knew better than to push too fast. He fixed small things on the ship, kept the food warm, and left space between them. He gave her something she hadn't felt in a long time: freedom to choose. One night, as the ship moved near a glowing purple nebula, power flickered slightly. Draven stepped into the back area with a lantern, checking the circuits. That's when he heard a soft rustle. He turned and saw her hand reaching for the soup again. But this time she paused halfway. Her sleeve had slipped down, and Draven saw it. Her arm, pale blue skin marked with glowing silver scars. They weren't natural, they were burned in, like ancient symbols pressed deep into her flesh. She noticed his stare and froze, then quickly pulled the sleeve back and turned her body away. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice tight with shame. Draven stepped back, raising both hands. "You don't have to be sorry." But she shook her head, trembling. "You saw it," she said, her voice barely audible. "Now you know." "Know what?" Draven asked gently. She didn't answer. Her fingers clutched the cloth over her chest like a shield. "I was used. Broken. Marked," she whispered. "They gave me to the dark place." Draven felt a knot in his stomach. "What dark place?" "Wait," he asked. She didn't answer, just whispered again. "I'm not pure anymore." Her words hit him like ice, cold and sharp. He stepped forward, slowly, carefully. "I don't care about that," he said. "I care about who you are now." She looked up at him, her eyes wet, but not crying. "No one ever said that before," she whispered. "They only looked at the marks." Draven sat down beside the wall, not too close. He didn't speak for a while, just stayed with her in silence. Then he said, "You're more than those scars, you know." The girl didn't reply, but she didn't turn away either. After some time she looked down at her hand. The symbols glowed softly. Then she touched her own arm like she was trying to wipe the pain away. "Do you think it's possible," she asked, "to be more than what they made me?" Draven met her eyes, steady and kind. "I think you already are," he said. She didn't say anything more. But that night, she didn't curl into the farthest corner. Instead, she lay on the middle cot facing his direction, not hiding completely. The music cube played a soft tune, and for the first time she fell asleep without shaking. Draven didn't sleep. He sat nearby, watching over her, his eyes on the stars, but his thoughts on her. Who was she really? What did those glowing scars mean? And who had hurt her so badly that she believed she wasn't pure anymore? He didn't have answers yet, but he made a silent promise. He would help her remember who she really was, even if it meant going to that dark place to bring her back into the light. The next morning, the Emberwake drifted through calm space. A small star glowed in the distance, casting soft orange light through the ship's windows. Draven brewed a hot drink and placed it near the girl without saying a word. She was sitting up now, not hiding in the shadows anymore. Her cloth still covered her face, but her posture was different. Less fear, more quiet strength. She took the drink with both hands, her fingers still trembling a little. "Thank you," she whispered again, her voice clearer than before. Draven nodded and sat across from her, not too close, not too far. He waited, letting silence be the bridge between them. Then slowly, she spoke. "My name," she said, voice shaking, "was once Valari." Draven leaned in slightly, repeating it softly. "Valari." She nodded once. "I haven't spoken that name in years," she added. "They told me I wasn't allowed to," Draven asked gently. "Who are they?" Valari's hands clenched the cup tightly. "My people, my family," she said bitterly. "I was born to a noble house on Zyreth Prime." She paused, voice full of pain. "But I refused what they ordered, so they called me defective." Draven didn't interrupt, he just listened. Valari's voice carried stories no one had ever heard, secrets buried under chains and cloth. "They tried to force a bonding," she said, "with a general, twice my age, known for cruelty. I said no. Just that, one word, and that was enough to make me less than nothing." Draven felt anger stir inside him. He had seen injustice before. But this was evil dressed as honor. "They took me to the scarring place," Valari continued. "They burned the words into me. Unworthy, disobedient, damaged." She pulled her sleeve down again, showing the glowing silver marks. "They thought the marks would destroy me," she whispered, "but they didn't." Draven leaned closer, eyes full of quiet strength. "Hey, didn't destroy you, Valari," he said. "They were wrong." Valari's eyes shined behind the cloth, surprised by his words. She whispered, "No one has ever said that to me before." "They should have," Draven replied, "because it's the truth." Valari looked down at her hands. Her voice was soft, but steady now. "I ran away from the transport ship, hid for weeks. But they found me, sold me like trash. They said I was cursed, touched by failed power, dangerous if I was allowed to speak." Draven shook his head slowly. "You're not cursed, Valari. You're powerful, and they were afraid of that." Valari blinked behind the cloth. She had never thought of it that way. The ship beeped suddenly. An alert from the scanner. Draven checked the screen. Just a minor asteroid field ahead. But when he looked back, Valari had quietly moved closer. "I want to remember who I was," she said, voice shaking. "I don't want to be afraid of my own name anymore." Draven smiled slightly. "Then we start there." He tapped the control screen and saved her name into the ship's crew list. Valari, status, passenger. The girl stared at it for a long time, like seeing her name written meant something deep inside her had been restored. And when she finally whispered again, it wasn't a cry of pain, it was a promise. "I'll never forget it again," she said. Draven nodded. "Good, because the stars remember, even if you don't." In that quiet corner of space, where no one else could hear, a name once buried in shame came back to life, and with it, a spark of something stronger than pain. Hope. The stars outside the Emberwake faded behind thick purple clouds. A strange space storm had rolled in fast, wild, glowing, and full of electric whispers. Draven checked the ship's shields twice, then locked the controls. They would have to ride it out, hidden in the eye of the storm. Valari sat near the window, her face still rapt but her eyes watching the swirling light. She hadn't spoken much since sharing her name, but something inside her had changed. She moved with more purpose, ate without fear, and even stood beside Draven during a scanner check. But now, in the middle of the storm, her glow began to return, soft pulses from the scars on her arms. Draven noticed, concerned. "Are you okay?" Valari didn't answer. She simply stared into the storm, eyes wide and far away. Then her body stiffened, and she collapsed. Draven rushed to her side, lifting her gently and placing her on the bed. Her hands twitched and her head moved from side to side. She was dreaming, but the dream looked more like a nightmare. "No, not again," she whispered, sweat running down her brow. Draven held her hand, trying to wake her, but her glow intensified, silver light crawling up her neck and around her shoulders. Inside the dream, Valari was back on the icy floor of the scarring hall. Voices echoed, cold, sharp, and full of judgment. Her sister stood above her, face painted with ceremonial gold. "You had one duty, Valari," her sister said. "Obey the house." "I wanted to choose my own life," Valari cried. "You shamed us," the voice snapped, "so now you carry the shame." A branding tool glowed red, and she screamed in the dream, on the ember wake. Her body arched, glowing lines burning hotter. Draven didn't know what to do. Touching her might hurt her or himself, but he couldn't leave her like this. He grabbed the music cube and played the soft tune she liked. He whispered gently, "You are not there, Valari. You're here with me." The glow slowly dimmed, and her body relaxed. Her eyes opened slowly, filled with tears. "I saw them again," she whispered. "I heard their voices." Draven handed her a cloth to wipe her face. "They can't touch you anymore," he said firmly. "This is your ship now." Valari looked at her hands, the glow now soft and calm. "They're not just scars," she said. "They react to emotion, to memory." Draven sat beside her. "So, they're more than marks?" She nodded slowly. "They are part of an ancient rite, forgotten by most," she said. "It was supposed to awaken power, not punish." Draven looked serious. "Then they feared you." Valari looked into his eyes, her voice soft but steady. "Yes, they feared what I might become." She stood shakily and walked to the window. The storm outside had started to clear, revealing stars again. Valari raised her hand and touched the window. For a second, her glow matched the energy outside, like she was speaking to the storm. "I'm not just broken," she said. "I'm connected to something greater." Draven nodded, stepping beside her. "Then let's find out what that is," he said. She turned to him, her cloth still covering her face, but her eyes full of purpose. "For the first time in years," she whispered, "I want to remember more." Outside, lightning cracked through the clouds one last time, but inside the ship, it was calm. The storm had passed, not just around them, but inside her too. The space around the Emberwake was quiet again. Stars blinked peacefully, and the storm was far behind them. But peace doesn't last long in this part of the galaxy, and trouble had just found them. Draven sat at the control panel when the alert chimed. A red symbol flashed on the screen. Bounty ping detected. He tapped it quickly, and a hologram popped up. His breath caught in his throat. It was her, Valari, her face half covered, her body cloaked in shadows, but it was definitely her. The bounty was marked, high priority, rogue asset, reward, 80,000 credits, dead or alive. Draven stared at the screen, fists clenched. Someone powerful was still hunting her, not because she was weak, but because she was dangerous to them. Behind him, Valari stepped into the room, her voice low. "You saw it," she said. Draven turned, not hiding the screen. "Yes," he replied. "They're still looking for you." Valari didn't flinch. Instead, she walked closer and sat down slowly beside him. "They always were," she said. "I just hoped I'd gone far enough." Draven looked at her, serious now. "Why is the bounty so high?" Valari hesitated, then pulled back her sleeve, revealing the glowing scars once again. "These marks weren't just for pain," she explained. "They sealed something inside me." Draven raised an eyebrow. "Sealed?" She nodded. "A connection to an ancient force, one my bloodline feared. If it awakened fully, it could bring balance or change the order of power." "And they didn't want change," Draven guessed. Valari gave a sad smile. "They wanted control." Suddenly the ship rocked. A second alert beeped. Tracking lock detected. A black shadow drifted out of a nearby asteroid field. An assassin ship, sleek and sharp, no markings. It was already closing in. Valari jumped up, her energy flaring slightly. "We have to run," she said quickly. "If they capture me, I'll disappear forever." Draven stood, grabbing the manual controls. I don't run from cowards, he said. Let's dance. He steered the Emberwake into a sharp dive, weaving between rocks. The enemy ship followed, firing light plasma bolts. Draven grinned, flipping a gravity switch that twisted their path like a snake, but they weren't fast enough. One bolt struck the hull, hard. Sparks flew across the console and the lights dimmed. Valari stumbled, falling near the cargo panel. Draven shouted, "Hold on!" As the ship shook again, Valari crawled to her knees, one hand glowing as she touched the floor. Her eyes flared brighter than ever. Then something strange happened. The ship's walls pulsed with light, as if her energy had spread into the Emberwake itself. "What did you do?" Draven asked, stunned. "I don't know," she gasped. "But I felt the ship, like it listened." A wave of heat rushed through the control room, and the engines flared back to full power. Draven took the chance. He twisted the controls and shot upward. The enemy ship tried to follow, but smashed into a floating rock, exploding in silent fire. The Emberwake drifted safely again. Smoke filled the cabin, but the danger was gone. For now, Valari leaned against the wall, exhausted. Draven ran to her side, helping her sit. "You didn't just survive," he said. "You saved us." She looked up, weak but steady. "I didn't mean to. I just didn't want to lose this safety." "You won't," Draven promised. "Not while I'm here." Valeri's breath slowed, and for the first time, she allowed her hand to rest over his. A silent thank you, not just for saving her, but for staying when running would have been easier. The Emberwake was quiet again, but tension filled the air. Draven fixed the broken wires near the power core, sweat dripping down his face. Valeri rested nearby, still weak from what she had done. But something about her had changed again. She no longer sat in corners or hid behind shadows. She moved with slow confidence now, and her eyes, once filled with fear, now held something else. Fire. "I felt the ship," she said softly, "like it became part of me." Draven paused, then nodded. "You did something, Valari. Something powerful." She looked down at her glowing hand. "I didn't know I could do that," she whispered. "I thought they sealed all of it away." Draven finished repairing the cables. "Maybe what they sealed wasn't meant to be hidden," he said. "Maybe they were just afraid you'd realize your worth." Valari blinked at his words. No one had ever told her she was worth anything. Suddenly, the alert rang again. 3 small ships on their scanner. "They brought friends," Draven muttered. "They must have tracked the energy burst you caused." Valari stood slowly, steadying herself. "I'll go," she said, voice heavy. "If I leave, maybe they'll stop chasing us." "No," Draven replied instantly. "I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself." She turned to him, pain in her voice. "Why? I'm just a burden, a danger to your life." Draven looked at her, eyes hard. "You're not a burden, Valari," he said. "You're the reason we survived. You saved us. That's not weakness. That's strength." She stared at him, stunned. She'd never been defended like that before, never been told she mattered. Outside, the enemy ships began circling, sending a warning signal. Draven grabbed his blaster and activated the ship's manual shield. Valari followed him, her hands glowing again, brighter this time. "What are you planning?" she asked. "I'm going to buy us time," he replied. "You hold the inside." "I trust you," she nodded slowly, not because she believed in herself yet, but because he did. Draven opened the rear hatch just as one of the enemy ships landed. 2 bounty hunters stepped out, tall, armored, and armed. One of them growled, "Turn over the rogue, and we won't scrap your bones." Draven smiled slightly. "That's a bad offer," he said. Then he fired. A quick blast hit the first attacker in the chest, and chaos exploded. Inside the ship, Valari stood near the power core. Her body was glowing from the scars to her fingertips. She placed both hands on the panel, whispering words in a forgotten tongue. The ship responded. Lights surged, energy twisted, and suddenly a barrier of light formed around the hull. The second attacker tried to charge in, but was blasted backward by the shield. Outside, Draven ducked behind a crate as more shots flew. Then he heard it, a pulse. He looked up and saw the enemy ship trembling, systems crashing one by one. Valari walked out slowly, hands glowing like twin stars. She wasn't hiding now. She faced the remaining enemy directly. You came for something broken, she said, but I'm not broken anymore. The bounty hunters looked unsure, then afraid. Valari lifted her hand and released a burst of energy into the sky. A warning, a promise, and the enemy ships turned and fled. The fight was over. Draven walked to her side, bruised but smiling. You scared them off, he said. Valari looked at her hands, still glowing faintly. I didn't even mean to, she whispered. But I didn't want to be helpless anymore. Draven placed a hand on her shoulder. You're not, he said. You never were.
The Emberwake drifted slowly through a silent stretch of space. There were no enemies now, no alerts, no storms, but something even bigger was about to happen. Not outside, but within. Valari stood in front of the mirror in the ship's small washroom. Her hands trembled slightly as they reached for the edges of the cloth that covered her face. She had worn it for years, long before the auction, long before Draven found her. It wasn't just fabric, it was a shield, a prison, and a secret all in one. She looked at her reflection, only her glowing eyes were visible behind the cloth, and she whispered to herself, he deserves to see the truth. In the control room, Draven was adjusting the ship's course toward a quiet moon. When he heard soft footsteps, he turned and froze. Valari was standing there without her veil. For the first time, he saw her fully. Her skin was pale blue, marked by glowing silver lines that ran across her face like ancient writing, but it wasn't ugly, it was beautiful. Her features were delicate, regal even, and her scars didn't make her look damaged, they made her look ancient, like a star-given form. Draven stood slowly, eyes wide but calm. He began, but couldn't find the words. Valari stepped forward, hands clenched at her sides. I'm not what they said I was, she said, voice strong and clear. I'm not a mistake, not unworthy, and not cursed. Draven nodded, still speechless. Valari raised her hand and pressed her palm against the main control screen. The ship responded instantly, its systems glowing in the same silver tone as her scars. Then the screen showed something new, an ancient symbol, part crest, part map. Valari looked at it with wide eyes. This is my bloodline's mark, she whispered. They tried to erase it from me, but it's still here. Draven stepped beside her. What does it mean? Valari stared at the glowing symbol. It means I'm the last of the Starborn line, she said, guardians of knowledge and peace. Draven blinked. Your royalty. She gave a half smile. I was, once, but they erased my name and said I was nothing. Draven's voice was steady now. They were wrong. Valari nodded slowly. I think I always knew, she said, but I was afraid to believe it. The ship beeped again, showing coordinates hidden behind her family crest. A temple, Valari said, reading the strange language. One I thought was destroyed. Draven glanced at the screen, then looked at her. Do you want to go there? Valari breathed in deep. Yes, she said, it's where the truth is waiting. But she looked nervous again. What if I'm not ready to face it? Draven turned her gently by the shoulders. You already faced everything else, he said. You faced the pain, the fear, and even me. Valari gave a soft laugh, the first real one he'd ever heard from her. You're not that scary, she teased. Draven smiled. Still, I'm glad you looked past the beard. She looked into his eyes and said quietly, thank you, Draven, for seeing me when I couldn't even see myself. He nodded, serious now. You showed me what strength really looks like, he replied. Let's find that temple. And as the ship adjusted course, Valari sat in the co-pilot's seat, no longer hiding, no longer ashamed. For the first time in years, she didn't whisper, I'm not worthy, because she had finally begun to believe that she was.
The moon they landed on was quiet, too quiet. No wind, no animals, only stillness and dust. Mountains surrounded the landing site, their sharp peaks rising like blades into the sky. At the base of the largest cliff stood a black gate, half buried in ash. Valari stepped down from the Emberwake slowly. The silver lines on her skin shimmered brighter with every step toward the gate. She could feel something in the air, something ancient, something alive. Draven walked beside her, blaster holstered but ready. "I thought temples were supposed to be peaceful," he said, glancing at the dark sky. Valari didn't smile. "This one was burned during the cleansing," she said softly. "My people tried to erase everything tied to the Starborn." She knelt near the gate, pressing her glowing palm into a strange circle carved into the stone. The ground rumbled. Dust rose and the gate slowly creaked open, revealing stairs that led deep underground. Draven followed her in, flashlight in one hand. The walls were covered in ancient writing, symbols that pulsed when Valari passed by. "They remember you," Draven said. Valari whispered. "Or they remember the blood in me." At the bottom of the stairs they reached a wide chamber. Statues lined the walls, guardians with silver eyes and wings of stone. In the center stood a large circular platform with a crystal pedestal at its heart. Valari stepped forward and placed both hands on the crystal. It glowed instantly, filling the chamber with soft white light. The air became warm, like the past had returned to welcome her home. A voice echoed, "Not a person, but the temple itself." "Emberlight has returned," it said. Draven blinked. "Emberlight?" Valari's eyes were wide, her breath caught. "That was the name they gave to the one meant to lead," she whispered. "My name." The light from the crystal formed images in the air, memories recorded in energy. They saw Valari as a child, standing beside her sister, learning the ancient ways. They saw her training, laughing, glowing with purpose. Then came the betrayal, the trial, the chains, the branding. Draven clenched his fists as the final image showed her collapsing at the feet of the High Council. "They took everything," Valari said softly. "Even my future." Draven stepped closer, placing a hand on her back. "They tried," he said, "but they didn't win." The crystal pulsed again and opened a hidden compartment in the floor. Inside was a smooth orb of energy, floating and spinning slowly. Valari reached for it, her hands steady. The moment her fingers touched it, the temple glowed from top to bottom. Suddenly, a warning echoed through the walls. "Unauthorized presence detected." Draven spun around. "We've got company." A group of armored figures appeared at the top of the stairs. They wore the crest of the old royal guard, weapons drawn. The leader stepped forward, face hidden behind a silver mask. "You were warned never to return, Valari," he said. "You no longer have the right to touch the Ember Core." Valari stood tall, the orb glowing in her hand. Her voice was calm, but powerful. "I never lost the right," she said. "You just tried to bury it." The leader raised his weapon. "Step away or we end this here." Draven pulled his blaster, eyes narrowed. "Try," he said coldly, "and you'll regret it." Valari stepped between them, raising the orb high. "I won't run," she said, her voice echoing through the temple. "You tried to erase me, but I found the truth." The walls glowed with her light, and the temple responded, not to the soldiers, but to her. The stone guardian's eyes lit up, ready to defend their chosen one. The chamber lit up with blinding white light. Stone guardians began to move, their ancient arms slowly raising glowing shields. The masked soldiers stepped back, startled by the awakening of the temple. Valari stood firm in the center, the orb pulsing gently in her hands. Her silver-lined skin shimmered brighter than ever, no longer a mark of shame, but of power. Draven stood at her side, weapon ready, but his eyes stayed on her. He didn't need to protect her anymore. She was standing on her own now. The masked leader raised his voice. "You will not walk out of here with that core." "It belongs to the High Council," Valari answered, calm and clear. "It belongs to the bloodline of the Starborn. And that blood still lives in me." The soldiers charged, weapons raised, but the moment their boots hit the glowing circle on the ground, the temple reacted. Energy barriers burst from the floor, forcing them back. The guardians moved faster now, still slow like old machines, but with purpose. Draven watched in awe as Valari lifted the orb above her head. She whispered ancient words, not taught but remembered, like they had been sleeping inside her all along. The orb's glow wrapped around her like a halo, and the temple walls shifted, opening a wide arch of light behind her. "That's the exit," she said, breathing fast. "But once we pass through, it seals forever." Draven looked at the masked soldiers struggling against the walls. "What about them?" Valeri turned to him with steady eyes. They'll be judged by the temple, she said, not by me. She reached out her hand to Draven. He took it without hesitation. As they stepped through the arch, the temple whispered one final word. Worthy. The light surrounded them, warm and soft like sunlight through a memory, and in an instant they were outside, standing on the mountainside again. The Emberwake waited quietly in the distance, but everything around them felt different, brighter, lighter, like something heavy had been lifted. Valeri let go of his hand and looked down at the orb in her palm. It had stopped spinning, now just a smooth crystal of light. The power is sealed, she said. Until the galaxy needs it again. Draven turned to her. And what about you? She looked up at him. No veil, no fear. I'm not running anymore, she said. I've remembered who I am. They walked back toward the ship together, side by side, no longer a protector and a broken stranger, but equals. Friends. Something more, perhaps. Something unspoken but felt in every step. Inside the Emberwake, Valeri looked at her reflection once more. This time, she didn't see a cursed girl or a forgotten name. She saw the last of the Starborn, and a survivor who chose to rise instead of hide. Draven leaned in the doorway, watching her quietly. You know, he said, when I first saw you at that auction, I had no idea what I was doing. Valeri smiled, turning to him. You gave 1 coin for someone the galaxy called worthless. Why? Draven stepped forward. Because I saw someone who hadn't given up even when the world told her to. Valeri's eyes softened. And now? She asked. Draven reached out, gently touching the edge of her silver-marked face. Now I see someone who saved me too. She placed the crystal orb gently into a storage case, locking it away. Then she whispered one last time, I was never unworthy. And Draven, with a quiet smile, replied, No, Valeri. You were just waiting to remember it. As the Emberwake rose from the dusty moon and disappeared into the stars, a forgotten temple sank back into silence, and the galaxy turned its page, because one soul had reclaimed its light and one human had seen its worth.